there's been a kind of a West Coast, East Coast notion of Black arts movement, and there was not similar focus on the kinds of cultural centers in Atlanta, Chicago, where he talked very brilliantly last night about Philadelphia, Newark, Boston, Charlotte, the whole North Carolina movement. All these places had these nodes or cores of Black arts activities that were not necessarily connected with each other, or they were connected by individuals, but not in an organized way. And that's, from my perspective, that's why I tell a very quick urban lore piece, how Sonia Sanchez and Leroy Jones, Amiri Baraka came to San Francisco. They were icons to a whole set of people, but they were not known broadly on the West Coast. It wasn't, as Sonia Sanchez says in the movies Agents of Change, you can mention Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, but when you start talking about Langston Hughes and W.B. Du Bois, there were whole sectors of people outside of that little core of people in the eastern part of the U.S. or in the Deep South, where we knew about some, because we had Black teachers who taught us, which is why I'm from Texas and Louisiana. But the broad sector of a lot of the students, first and second generation students going into colleges and universities on the West Coast, were not as exposed in many instances as other people were. So in 66, and I'll do this very quickly, but there's so much mythology about it, I'll just try to put it in place. In 66, a group of people came together, Mariam Al-Wadi and Jerry and several others, and we decided to commit ourselves to build this Black Student Union movement on campus and lay it out in such a way that there would be no exclusivity. Everybody on the campus who defined themselves as being Black was a member of the Black Student Union. Didn't have to pay dues, didn't have to show up. Wherever you were, that's who you were. And so that identity pressed a lot of people into action and motion. The second thing was that San Francisco State was like low-hanging fruit. It was a campus of liberals. It had a liberal history. White students on the campus had been involved in the anti-HUAC, the House Un-American Activities Committee struggles that had taken place in downtown San Francisco in 1960. There was a history, there was a tradition of leftist activity. It was a working class campus, almost everybody worked, so that was the setting. In 1966, James Meredith went on his attempted march through Jackson, Mississippi. And through Mississippi, and he got shot. And it was out of that the call by Brother Willie Ricks for Black Power, echoed by Stokely Carmichael, Kwame Ture, that really kind of sparked things. Although many of us who had been in the movement for years were already past Black Power in our consciousness. Actually we were pushing for Black Revolution. And by that, we don't mean participation, as Jim Foreman says. If you don't let us sit at the table, we're gonna cut the MF legs out from under it. That wasn't simply, we had already gone through that. We were already at a point where whether we were organized into cells or building broad-based organization, preparing ourselves for protracted struggle to overthrow the government of the United States of America. All right? Now, with regard to how we got to linking ourselves up, a group of people from San Francisco State went down to the Atlanta Project. See how the connections are made? Went down to the Atlanta Project, hooked up with people in the Atlanta Project. We were also connecting ourselves with revolutionary organizations outside the US. Several of us were invited to go to Mexico City. And the brother who went, one of the brothers who went south with us, a brother by the name of Charles Sizemore. Charles Sizemore was a graduate student at San Francisco State on the GI Bill. A very quiet brother, a very strong brother, who was a foundation for a number of us who were much younger. The two of us ended up in the fall of 1966 going to Mexico City. We connected with revolutionary individuals or people involved in revolutionary movements in Mexico and Guatemala, including Jan Sosa's organization in Guatemala. And while we were trying to take a break from a week of work, we were on a bus on our way to a bullfight, and we saw what we knew was a sister in a park in Mexico City. We got off the bus, ran over to the sister, and it turned out to be Sonia Sanchez. The most beautiful sister that either of us had ever seen on the planet. And Chuck Sizemore was smitten. Within about 3 weeks, we went to New York, where we were, let me get the sister's name. Her name was Cicely Tyson, who was a friend of Sonia's, and she was at that time with Miles Davis. We met at Cicely Tyson's apartment, and Sonia connected us with Leroy and Amina and Larry Neal. And that's where we found out that Larry Neal and Leroy were putting together a book along with a number of other people called Black Fire. What me and Chuck did, Chuck for two sets of reasons, and me for one reason. Chuck because he was in love with Sonia, and they produced twin sons, Moroni and Mungu, out of that period. And we invited Leroy and Sonia to come to San Francisco State, the purpose of which was to connect a very dynamic black arts movement that was happening in New York, Philadelphia, Newark area to the West Coast. And we didn't have a dime to bring them out, but our arrogance, as was stated last night by Haki, that we were so young, our thing was that if we wanted to do it, we were going to do it. And that's how that happened. It was nothing magical. Well, maybe it was magical in some ways, but it was nothing. There was no genius involved. We wanted to try to pull people who had substance and capacity into what we thought was a dynamic process that was going on, and we felt at least that fusion would make things happen in a way that they had not happened in the past. And when Sonia and Leroy and Amina came out, bringing a whole wave of people, and I include brothers sitting next to me, a whole wave of energy. Sun Ra came out to play. Sun Ra on the East Coast that people knew about. Sun Ra on the West Coast blew up San Francisco. So what I'm saying is that all these musicians begin to follow that energy that these brothers and sisters had brought out from the East. And then we fed that energy that was already in existence. Last point I'll make is this, and I get in trouble for this, but I'm going to say it anyway. There were two Black Panther parties in the Bay Area at that time. I'm sorry, my brother. There were two. There was the Black Panther Party in San Francisco and another in Oakland. And those two, the Black Panther Party in San Francisco, they had the two journals, the Soul Book and the Journal of Black Poetry, Joe Gonzalez. That was a cultural center that was extraordinary. At San Francisco State produced two centers of activities, a gallery lounge on the campus. That means that was a place where every Thursday, and sometimes every Tuesday and Thursday, musicians, artists, all kinds of people came to this. We just took it over. We took over the gallery because we took over the campus. We took over the administration. We took over the student government. We took over everything that we could that was hanging loose on the campus. That energy and power was partly driven by the kind of capacity of people like Leroy Jones and Sonia Sanchez and my brother here, who came out and helped us shape and guide and direct our cultural energies. I wanted to put that out. I know it took us a little time, but I wanted to get that out because it's urban lore that I was a part of, and I may not be here for the next conference, but I wanted to make sure that the record is straight, that linkage was wonderful and fantastic and visceral, and it's part of the reason why Black arts, I believe, Black Arts Movement continues and lives, as long as we connect with each other and find ways to connect with each other, we will continue to survive.